Hi there, this is Heather of Shutterbug 101. Today we'll be doing a walkthrough of the Fujifilm GFX 50S Mark II. Let's get started. The Fujifilm GFX 50S Mark II is a mirrorless 51 megapixel medium format camera. While there are not many medium format size sensors because full-frame sensors are built to be a 35mm equivalent, this sensor is 0.79 times wider than a full-frame. This will give you more information to capture at a higher quality in lower light. This camera has in-body stabilization up to 6.5 stops, has 425 focus points, a tilting LCD touchscreen, and digital card slots that both take the UHS 2 cards. The GFX 50S Mark II is more for photos like landscapes and portrait work, while the 100S is built for photos and video. So on features like continuous drive, it is only 3 frames per second, and while it is a large format video, the 50S Mark II goes up to 30 frames in 1080p, while the 100S has 4K video. This camera also has a 200 megapixel pixel shift option, in-body charging available, a mic and headphone port, is environmentally sealed, and has wireless options with the Fujifilm app as well. Today we'll be going through the buttons, doors, and menus of this camera so you can become a little more familiar with its overlay. So this is the first medium format camera I am doing a walkthrough of. I typically make my videos for new people that are just getting into cameras, just getting into a new model, that type of thing. But typically the person that is purchasing this camera has already been working with cameras for a long time. But if you happen to be one of those people that just went, yeah, that sounds like a camera I can grow into, but I don't know where to start, welcome. That is what I make my videos for. A lot of people just kind of looking for general information about the camera. That's why I do it at the very beginning. Otherwise, this is going to be a full walkthrough for people that are getting started. I'll typically skip over things in the menu and focus on the more important stuff, but in the future I have plans to do full menu walkthroughs, going over every little detail that there is, but this, like I said, is just a basic walkthrough to help you get started with this camera. Now, as you can see, if we take off the cap here, the sensor is just massive. It is absolutely incredible. And for the size of this camera, it's actually very lightweight, and it does feel very good when you hold on to it, which is great. Going over the front of the camera first, we've already kind of shown here, this is to release any lens that you have on the camera. This button here is actually going to be one of your function buttons. I believe on the outside of the camera there's a total of 4 function buttons. This is going to be customizable, however you want to set up your camera, anything you want immediate access to, which will probably use your middle finger when gripping the lens. It's going to be probably the easiest one to use. So if you want to set this to something specific, to change something very quickly, you could do that. I'll show you where the other ones are as we go along. On this side of the camera here, you can see that we do have a couple doors. Our first door here, this is going to be where our remote shutter release will go. If you would like to take a picture with long exposure, if you want to take a group shot, something like that. Then we have this door here, which is actually going to be our card slot door. You can see that we have card slot 2, card slot 1. It does show you which direction to put those cards in. Both of these are going to be UHS 2 compatible, giving you very high processing speeds for that high megapixel that we are shooting at, large files. On this side of the camera here, we have a couple more doors. We have, of course, the title of the camera here, the 50S Mark II. In this top door, we have the microphone port and the headphone port. Very clearly labeled, which is great. And then in this one here, we have the USB-C port, which is going to transfer our images. It can upgrade firmware, but also charge the battery, which is pretty great. especially if you're someone on the go. You have your HDMI cable here, and then we have this port here, which is our sync terminal. Typically, you'll use this if you're working in like a studio setting. On the bottom of the camera here, you can see we have our universal tripod screw mount, so you can use this on any tripod. We also have our battery door here, which does take the bigger battery, so hopefully will last a little bit longer than some of the older batteries we've seen in the Fuji models. Going to the top of the camera here, you can see that we have a still and movie switch, which I love that it's very easy to get to. You have stills and then you have movies, which of course to trigger while it's on the movie setting, you're gonna just use your shutter button, push once to start recording, push again to stop recording, and back to stills for regular picture taking. So easy access, it's not buried in the menus that we've seen on past models of Fujifilms. We have our mode dial here. Now you can see here, we do have our regular manual modes. So we have our lock button here to keep this from spinning on accident, which is great. We have our P mode, which is that programmed auto. No automatic modes on this camera because it is built for someone that's going to be using this professionally, selling their work. They want professional quality and they know their settings well. The program mode is going to be your closest option to automatic. It's going to allow you to choose your shutter speed or aperture while the camera kind of fixes the rest to give you a proper exposure. This is kind of your walk around mode if you don't really know what to expect or you don't know what your goal specifically is for your photograph. Then of course you have your S mode, which is going to be your shutter speed mode. This is to control how fast the camera takes the picture, where you can say capture a bird in flight, or you can slow it down and get that nice soft looking water look on a waterfall. Or you have your A mode, that's going to be your aperture mode. This is controlling the opening in the lens, getting that depth of field, either a nice blurry background or sharpness throughout. And then of course you have your M mode, which is full manual. You have every bit of control through every aspect of the camera. The camera only does what you tell it to. And then you have all these C modes, C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6. Now typically on cameras, the most you'll see is maybe 2 of those custom modes, and that's what these are. These are all custom modes. This is going to be for somebody that is taking pictures in a studio setting, or they have regular setups or regular locations at regular times that they go to, and maybe they find the perfect setting. Then they can save it to these custom modes and go back to those settings later. So it's fantastic options to have like presets for your settings on your camera here, and it does give you a lot of room for that. As you can see here, we have our secondary LCD screen, which once we turn the camera on, so when you turn the on switch on here, it should give you a lively display of what we're looking at. Now, because I don't have a lens on the camera at this time, it's not going to give me the shutter speed, it's not going to give me the aperture options because, you know, I can't take a picture. It'll show me the ISO, it'll show me all of the exposure options here, what mode I'm on, what size pictures I'm taking, what the white balance is at, what our film setting is at, and then the battery level as well. There's a little button on the side here that will actually light this sucker up in case you're having difficulty seeing, where it'll light up the rear of this so you can see it a little bit better in a dark situation. And these 2 here are actually going to be function buttons 2 and 3, more customizable options for you, whatever you would like to set. This one here is going to be your exposure button, so if you hit this and you adjust this rear wheel here, it's going to allow you to go higher in exposure or lower in exposure, depending on what you would like to do, but 0 is going to be what the camera recommends. You have your built-in microphones here and here. Otherwise, you would hook up a microphone to it and put it on your hot shoe here if you're not using an external flash. You have your view mode here, which is going to switch your view from viewfinder to screen or automatic. And then of course you have your diopter. You have your diopter on this side to make your viewfinder nice and clear, because say if you wear glasses, your eyes are going to be different from mine, so you can adjust your diopter accordingly for your viewfinder. Going to the back of the camera here, you can see we have our drive button up on top here, which is going to allow us to choose from a still image, multiple images, doing ISO bracketing, white balance bracketing, another kind of bracketing. This I believe is going to be like a photo overlap, so multiple exposure. And then you have your pixel shift here as well, which again, you can do a 200 megapixel pixel shift, which is insane. So that's what the drive button does. You have your trash can button, which when you are on playback mode, when we have pictures in the camera and there's pictures you don't want, you can just delete those blurry ones or those accidental ones. You have your autofocus settings here, which is going to be manual focus, continuous autofocus, and single autofocus. Single autofocus is going to be for a still subject like portraiture, which is going to be someone posing, or a landscape, something that's not moving. Continuous is going to continually look for a moving subject and focus accordingly. So if you're taking pictures of, you want to be prepared for a bird hopping around in a tree and kind of following that, you can do that. And then of course you have manual focus, which you would manually focus your lens on the camera. You also have a back button autofocus as well as an option. We have our quick menu here, which is the little Q on the side here, easily accessible. By accessing this, it'll give us a quick way to change all of these options here. So you have your shooting mode, again that's your mode dial. You have your ISO settings, you have your dynamic range settings, you have your white balance options, which generally in auto you're pretty good. We have the high ISO noise reduction. Now you can turn this on or off or higher or lower, but typically it does take longer before you can take the next picture if you do it in camera, so it's up to you. You have your image size. So this would be if you have it set to JPEG instead of RAW, or JPEG and RAW. You really do want to keep it on L, but it does give you different ratios, like 4:3 or 3:2 are typically the most popular. 16:9 matches like widescreen television, but you also have like Instagram 1:1. You have 65:24, which is insane. So you have different ratio sizes as well. This one here, image quality, will allow you to choose between JPEG, RAW, JPEG and RAW. Then you have your film simulation. So you have standard, you have, I believe that's Velvia. I don't like that they don't like tell you on here. You have to like go into the menu to see like the difference. But if you know Fuji, then you'll know these right off the bat, what they do. You got sepia, you got different black and white options in here. Essentially different Fuji film options. Standard's just going to be regular. Then you can also adjust highlighting tone, shadow tones, color, sharpness. You can do all of that right in camera to avoid any major editing, and that's really good for landscapers especially. You have your self timer, you have your autofocus mode, so where it's autofocusing. Again, you can change all of these, whatever's highlighted, with this back wheel here. You have your flash function. Now, this does not have a built-in flash, so this would only be for an attachable flash to that hot shoe. And then you have your LCD brightness as well. And your universal escape button, of course, to get out of this, if you don't want to change anything or you just want to get back to shooting, is your shutter button halfway down. It puts you right back into your shooting mode. You have your joystick here that will move your focus box around, or you have touch screen as well. The screen does flip out. It also flips forward, which is really kind of interesting. So if you were flipping it out to do like a portrait style versus something that's going to be more so for landscape, but you just need a little bit of tilt because maybe say you're short like someone like me, then that would be an option. You have your auto exposure lock button here to lock in your exposure depending on what your metering is. We have your button and OK button as well. we have which we're going to go over last. You have your display or back button. So your display button will change how you're seeing the screen here and what's available on it. And then we have your playback button, which when we discuss the trash can button is going over your pictures that you've already taken. So now lastly, we're going to go ahead and cover the menu. So the menu here has different tabs on the side. IQ is going to be your image quality settings. A lot of these are in your quick menu, so we'll breeze through some of those. We'll also breeze through some of them that I don't think is going to be a major use right away in the camera. We'll definitely go over those more in the more detailed version of the menu walkthrough in a later date. But just so you get started, again, you have image size, which is going to be your JPEG size and ratio. You have your image quality, which again, JPEG RAW or JPEG and RAW. RAW recording, I personally like to go uncompressed. You have your film simulation. You have monochromatic color. This is only going to be available in certain settings. You have your grain effect if you want to add grain, very similar to film. Your color chrome effect, color chrome FX blue, smooth skin effect, so different effects that you can put on. You have your dynamic range priority. You want to have that to a certain setting as well. Your white balance, we've already gone over that. Your tone curve, color, sharpness, high ISO noise resolution, clarity. Again, all things that you can change before you take your picture to avoid any editing in post. You have long exposure noise reduction to be on or off. Lens modulation optimizer, again, only available when you have a lens. Color space, you really want to keep in sRGB. It's going to be the most universal. You have pixel mapping. You have edit, save, custom settings. There's a lot of customization in these cameras, which is both a huge pro and a con, but don't let it be too daunting for you. You have mount adapter settings. You have area focus and autofocus mode, so where it's focusing, how it's focusing. We went over that with this and in your quick menu. Store autofocus mode by operation. You have rapid autofocus. You have low light priority autofocus single. So if it's shooting in low light, it'll automatically switch to S, I believe. Autofocus point display, how it's displaying there. You can turn that on or off. Number of focus points being used. Again, this camera has 425 focus points available, so you can either use 117 of those or all 424. You have pre-autofocus, autofocus illuminator, which I did end up skipping that. That's going to be this guy right up here. It's going to light up. It's basically like a little LED flashlight to see if it can capture more details or see more texture of what's going on in front of it if there's too low light or, again, not enough details for it to focus. You have face eye detection settings for portraiture work. You have autofocus plus manual focus to use both side by side and assistance to each other. Manual focus assist. You have focus checking, interlocking spot auto exposure, and focus area to get those to work together, so your metering and your focusing working together. Instant autofocus setting. You have your depth of field scale, which is going by pixel. You have your release and focus priority if you would like it to release. If you would like it to release no matter what, whether it has determined it has focus or not, or whether you would like it to focus entirely before you are able to take the picture, you can choose between one of those. You have autofocus range limiter. You have your touchscreen mode as well. As you can see here, it looks like we actually went to our autofocus manual focus tab without me realizing we switched to it from IQ. So now we're in the third tab here, which is going to be our shooting settings. Self-timer, again, that's in your quick menu. Save self-timer settings. So if you have certain settings that you would like for your self-timer, you can save those. Self-timer lamp, that LED light will actually flash on and off, showing you that it's working. Interval timer shooting, so you need to have an SD card in if you would like to use that. interval timer shooting exposure smoothing. Wow, that's fancy. So it'll help smooth some stuff out for you. Auto exposure bracketing settings, film simulation bracketing. So if maybe you're like, well, I want to try all the different film simulations, you can try that. Focus bracketing setting, photometry, which is your metering modes. That's going to consider the entire picture, the direct center of it, or spot where you can use your auto exposure lock button. Your shutter type, your electronic, your manual, or automatically doing both. You have flicker reduction for like fluorescent lights, ISO, image stabilization mode, 35mm format mode. That's going to downgrade the medium format sensor to a 35mm equivalent, which is full frame. Then you have wireless communication for your camera to, like, say, your phone. You have flash function settings for when you have an off-camera flash. Red eye removal if you are using flash. TTL lock mode. Again, these are all going to be your flash settings because we are in the flash mode. So in the setup menu here, this stuff is going to be a little bit more buried. So your user settings are going to allow you to format your card, which is extremely important to know what that does and why to do it. So when you use your trash can, you're essentially recycling your files and allowing that data to be overwritten. When you overwrite a file and overwrite data so many times, it can corrupt the card, it can lock you out. So once you have taken your card and you have backed it up to a solid source that you know is safe, your computer, an external hard drive, a cloud-based system, you're going to want to format your card inside your camera so it deletes all data and starts fresh and new, and it'll actually keep your card much healthier, much longer. Then you can change your time and date, you can change the time difference, the language, your My Menu settings. So below the wrench here, you see where it says My very faintly. I can't access it at the moment because I don't have it set up, but what you can do is in that tab through right here, the My Menu settings, you can actually take anything we went over in these tabs here, anything you don't want on the outside of the camera but want to have immediate access to in the menu itself, and you just put it under the My Menu tab so it's easy to find. You don't have to dig through all of this stuff, which is really cool. And so you would do that here. Sensor cleaning, which it essentially just kind of vibrates the sensor. If you have spots on your images, you may need an actual sensor cleaning. Please, try not to do it yourself unless you know very well how to do it. You have battery age, which is really interesting. You can reset your camera in case you get stuck. Maybe you're playing with something, now the camera's doing something funny, and you need to reset your settings. That's how you would do it there. Regulatory, so I think that's just kind of that's your model number and all of its personal information. Then you have sound setup, which will be like autofocus beep, playback, shutter sound, your brightness for here, and your color adjustment for here. So it's all of your screens that you have to set up. You have your button and dial setting. So again, this would be to adjust like your function buttons to be custom to what you want. Now, you don't have to do this right away. Take pictures with your camera, and as you go along, you're going to start learning, gosh, I wish I had a fast way to get to this setting. And then you'll go right into here, go right into your custom buttons and program one of your function buttons to do what you need it to. You have power management, save data setup, connection settings, so like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi to connect to your phone, to connect to the Fuji app, to transfer images to your wireless device, or to use your phone as a remote control. Even if you purchase the Instax printer separately, you can print straight from the camera to that printer, which is kind of a nice little fun extra or something. Look into that because it's a fun printer to connect your Fujifilm to. Other than that, because we've already gone over the My Menu tab and what that is, it pretty much sums up this camera. I mean, as for Fuji's, this is a very simple overlay of a camera. Very few buttons, very few dials, nice and comfortable in your hand, just very easy to work with. But if you guys have any questions, something I didn't go over in enough detail, something that, you know, you would like me to go over again for you, or maybe something that I missed, please let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. If you would like to see me do any lens comparisons for the Fujifilm, I know that, not necessarily for this one, but other Fujifilm cameras, Tamron is making a line with Fuji now, so if you would like to see some comparisons there, I can put those on my list. And again, if you have any questions, leave me a comment below, and until next time, keep your eye out for inspiration, Shutterbugs. Bye.